The story we all learn is simple. America built a super bomb, dropped it on Japan, and the war ended. A clean, tragic, but necessary finale. Except, history is never clean. By summer 1945, Japan was a wreck. Its cities were charcoal, its navy was an artificial wreath, and its people were learning to appreciate the finer points of subsistence farming. They were losing. They knew they were losing. And most importantly, the United States knew they were losing. The question wasn't if they'd surrender, but how to get them to sign the paperwork without a bloody invasion. The big holdup was two words: unconditional surrender. To the Americans, it meant total victory. To the Japanese leadership, it was terrifyingly vague. Did it mean their entire culture would be dismantled? Crucially, what would happen to Emperor Hirohito? To them, he wasn't just a head of state, he was a living god, the literal soul of the nation. Getting rid of him was like asking the Pope to manage a convenience store. It was a non-starter. And thanks to cracking their diplomatic codes, the US government was fully aware of this. There was another clock ticking, and it wasn't nuclear. It was Soviet. At the Yalta Conference, Stalin had promised to invade Japanese-held Manchuria exactly 3 months after Germany surrendered. That date was August 8, 1945. Many top American military minds, like Fleet Admiral William Lehigh, thought this would be the real knockout blow. Japan was infinitely more terrified of a Soviet invasion and being carved up by communists than they were of the Americans. The US knew this, creating a bizarre race to end the war before their supposed allies could join the fight and claim a piece of the pie. Meanwhile, in a series of meetings that were probably catered, the Target Committee was picking cities to erase. Their criteria were chillingly practical. The target had to be relatively untouched by previous firebombing raids so they could get a clear before and after picture. It needed to have a high concentration of buildings to demonstrate the destructive power. The ideal city also had psychological value. The ancient capital of Kyoto was high on the list until Secretary of War Henry Stimson, a man of culture, had it removed. Why? He and his wife had visited and quite liked it. A lovely vacation spot, apparently. So, Hiroshima it was, a city of significant military and industrial value, as the official line went. It was the headquarters of the 2nd General Army, sure. It also had about 300,000 civilians. On August 6, 1945, at 8:15 a.m., the Enola Gay dropped its payload. The bomb, nicknamed Little Boy, detonated with the force of 15,000 tons of TNT. Hours later, President Truman announced the successful bombing of a Japanese army base, a description so misleading it borders on performance art. He wanted to avoid, as far as possible, the killing of civilians. Mission accomplished, I guess. The Japanese leadership was, understandably, confused. Initial reports from Hiroshima were garbled nonsense about a city that had simply vanished. They didn't have time to investigate, to understand, to debate, or to surrender, because only 3 days later, the second bomb was on its way. Why the rush? Simple momentum and a poor weather forecast. The primary target was the city of Kokura, but it was cloudy. So the B-29 boxcar diverted to its secondary target, Nagasaki. The fate of a city, decided by cloud cover. It's a wonderfully human touch. On August 9th, Japan's Supreme Council was in a heated meeting about the first bomb, when an aide burst in with urgent news. It wasn't about Nagasaki. It was that the Soviet Union had just declared war, and their armies were pouring into Manchuria, crushing the Kwantung Army. This was the real nightmare scenario. The atomic bomb was a horrifying new weapon, but the Soviet invasion was a strategic catastrophe. It meant the end of any hope for a negotiated peace brokered by Moscow, and raised the terrifying prospect of a communist Japan. The game was truly over. So Japan surrendered, and immediately the myth-making began. The official story became that the bombs, and the bombs alone, ended the war, and that they saved over 1 million American lives that would have been lost in an invasion. It's a compelling narrative. The only problem is that the million lives number was manufactured well after the fact. Original military estimates for a potential invasion were far, far lower, somewhere around 40,000. The bigger number just sounded better, transforming a deeply questionable act into a heroic, life-saving calculation. It was a PR campaign, and it worked beautifully. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more historical insights. Thanks for watching, nerds!